All right, good morning, everyone. It is 1 minute after 10, so I'll go ahead and get started. So today is the retreat day for Samsara and Nirvana. As I mentioned, there will be 4 meditations in today's retreat, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And um, so the theme, the goal of these meditations is to have some taste of what are the contemplations that give rise to uh, what's called renunciation or definite emergence, the wish to definitely emerge from cyclic existence. So you do that by deeply understanding what in the Lamrim. And so these are very traditional Lamrim meditations. Um, and they fall under the understanding or the cultivating the understanding of the disadvantages of cyclic existence. Um, so we're meant to necessarily we're meant to try to um, reverse any attachment or attraction that we have to the pleasure, what we might think of as the pleasures of cyclic existence. We might think, well, things aren't that bad. I've got, friends, I've got good food, I've got sources of entertainment. Um, so we have a very, and of course, I think even within the human realm, if we didn't have such a privileged existence, we probably would naturally have. So, I mean, in that way, I think this, one way in Rinpoche's last class on Sunday, he was saying that samsara is set up, in a way to cultivate, can be set up in a way to cultivate extreme attachment, extreme, and then, but it can also, um, we have the seeds of wisdom, we have the seeds of loving kindness, compassion, and the ability to understand, a deeper truth about samsara as well. So it's also set up, if we choose, it's set up also to liberate us. So it's really about what we focus on. If we go through life focusing on, our access to good food and friends and so on, then that really is a very narrow perspective that even isn't even shared by most people. Most people, most humans on the earth right now, billions of them are having not such a great time. And so they probably would actually find it easier, to give rise to renunciation than we do. And, so in that way, for us, samsara in a way is set up, our samsara right now is kind of set up in a way to make it a little bit challenging to really deeply confront suffering because we have it pretty good, even compared to, of course, compared to all other realms, but even within the human realm, we're in the top, 1/2 of 1% of human experiences that are happening right now. So it can be a little bit, so it's necessary to reverse seeing our experiences as pleasurable, kind of in and of themselves, or as something that we should aspire to, or something that we want more of as a good in and of itself. We may see the value in a succession of perfect human rebirths to create the causes and the conditions to complete the practice. But we don't, you know, we don't get overly attracted to it. It's kind of like, we see the gym as sort of a necessary thing that we do, but, to keep the body healthy. but we don't see it as the solution to all of our problems. We don't see it as, yes, I need to go to the gym. Yes, I need to exercise. Yes, I need to find ways. But we don't think, well, by going to the gym, by exercising, by being in that environment, then all of my relationship problems will be solved. All of my financial problems will be solved. Everything will just magically work out. We just see it as useful. We see it as a useful tool to accomplish our aims in a particular realm. So we see a succession of perfect human rebirths as necessary. If we don't complete the path in one lifetime, then we'll need to have a succession of additional perfect human rebirths in which we have space and time to engage in further effort, but we don't get caught up in the kind of distractions that are also present in that environment. We just look at it as a means to a particular end. So these contemplations, they can be a little bit heavy, to spend a whole day contemplating the disadvantages of everything that we've spent a lifetime only looking at the advantages of. So if it's nice here, so if it's nice there, maybe get out into nature a little bit today. Look at some plants, look at some landscapes. Try to lighten your mind a little bit because it can be a little bit heavy to do all of these contemplations in one day. And I would say also too, when you're working with these contemplations in daily life, it certainly isn't necessary to look at every single one of these contemplations, in such a condensed format. You can pick a couple of them and work with them. We're going to look at, many different angles all in one day. And certainly in daily life, you could just focus on a few when you're focusing. Because we've talked about how um, one way of approaching the practice of Lamrim is to um, give each topic a month. We've talked about how that's one approach. So if you're going to give renunciation 1 month, then these are the contemplations. These 4 meditations might be that main framework for that 1 month of the topic of renunciation or definite emergence. But you could just do 2 or 3 of these individual subtopics each day, and just really give them more time, explore them more slowly rather than feeling like you've got to, go through all of these points. So that's the plan for today. Are there any thoughts or questions before let me see if I don't spotlight myself so that, all right. Are there any thoughts or questions for today? I mean, for right now, before we actually get started at all. All right, so we'll start with setting our motivation. And so we'll do that with reciting the prayers of refuge and bodhicitta and offering a mandala. So I'll screen share that. So we generate a mind of refuge and bodhicitta. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit transmigratory beings. And then we'll offer a mandala. So before we offer the mandala, we'll just connect with that prayer. of refuge and bodhicitta. Refuge is motivated by concern and confidence, concern in our existential condition and the existential condition of all other ordinary sentient beings, that of the uncertainty of falling into the lower realms at death. So we think that I myself am not beyond suffering, I myself am not beyond death. Neither are any other ordinary sentient beings beyond suffering, beyond death. And so I have to turn toward this valid source of refuge, this valid source of protection, in order to be guided, be protected in this life and in the bardo. And I do that not just to create protection for myself, but so that I myself can become a Buddha. I myself can set myself up for that succession of perfect human rebirths if necessary, in order to achieve that highest goal of enlightenment, perfect enlightenment, to create the inner capacity to be of perfect benefit to others. And then we imagine that this environment and the beings in it are transformed into a pure land as we recite the mandala offering. The ground is blessed with scent and with flowers strewn, adorned with Mount Meru, the four lands, the sun and the moon, transformed as a pure land and offered. May all wandering beings enjoy this Buddha land. All those objects of my mind's three poisons, coveted friend, foe, and stranger, body, wealth, worldly pleasure, without feeling of loss, I surrender. Receive them, please, and free all beings from their bondage. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniriataya. All right. So I just again pause and really cultivate, really clarify our motivation for being here in our own minds. Seeing the cultivation of definite emergence, the wish to definitely emerge from suffering, as critical in our spiritual path. The need to generate clarity about our existential condition, that since beginningless time we've been reborn under the influence of karma and delusion without choice, just being buffeted by the winds of karma and delusion up and down through the six realms, never being truly free, lacking the freedom to choose which realm, which experiences we experience, and lacking the freedom to be separated from the engine of cyclic existence, the arising of affliction in the mind. In that way, creating the causes of cyclic existence again and again in each of those lifetimes, fueling our suffering experiences, fueling the dissatisfactory nature of all of our experiences. So we want to just be free, to grow weary of participating in that cycle, that for us, what has been a beginningless cycle of suffering, but which can come to an end. If there was nothing to replace samsara with, then there would be no point in thinking about the disadvantages of cyclic existence. But we can replace ordinary existence with enlightened existence. We can replace bondage with liberation. So we need to see clearly what our condition is so that we have the strength to practice the path, to endure hardship, difficulty, to persevere in our practice. So I think this is the purpose of our time, creating the drive to achieve liberation, not for oneself, but for the benefit of others, that they too can be free. All right. So we will begin then. So the 4 meditations for today are the 3 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, the 8 sufferings, and then the 6 poisons, which is why I said it's a little bit of a heavy day. So we'll begin with the 3 sufferings. So try to adjust your posture, settle into a stable, comfortable, upright position. Thinking about maintaining an upright spine. Trying to not slouch, not lean. Letting go of thoughts of the past, plans for the future. Letting go of attending to the external world, allowing sights and sounds to be as they are without needing to investigate. Constraining your awareness just to the body and mind. Concentrating that awareness in the present by attending closely to the physical sensation that accompanies the in-breath and the out-breath in the space around the opening of the nostrils. Breathing naturally, breathing normally, just noticing whatever sensations are arising, giving yourself the instruction to notice quickly when anything other than that one physical sensation is arising in the mind, and then without judgment or frustration, lifting your awareness up from those distractions and placing it gently but firmly again and again on the breath. And then you can try to contemplate the field of merit. So we visualize in the space before you, visualizing yourself in a larger open space, and visualizing in the space in front, seated upon a throne that is supported at the four corners by a pair of snow lions. Upon the throne is an open lotus, sun, and moon disk, and upon the throne, lotus, sun, and moon is Buddha Shakyamuni. His body is of golden light. His right hand resting on his right knee, and the earth touching mudra. His left hand rests in his lap, holding an alms bowl full of nectar. And surrounding Shakyamuni, you visualize the infinite Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, filling all of space like stars. And visualize oneself surrounded by all sentient beings. Your mother in this life on your right, your father on your left. Friends and loved ones behind. Those you find difficult in front. And strangers in all directions. And make a heartfelt request to be purified of all obscurations, negativities, to receive the transcendental wisdom of the path, all of the realizations, including renunciation, and think that in response to your request, Buddha Shakyamuni sends forth streams of golden white light that enter into your heart, pervading your body and mind, clearing away all obstacles, difficulties, obscurations, and filling you with the wisdom of these teachings. And then we begin to contemplate the three types of suffering, which is the general framework of dissatisfactory experience taught by the Buddha. So the first of these is the suffering of pain. This is the obvious, overt form of unsatisfactory experience, any unwanted, unwished for physical or mental distress. So think back in your own life as the issue with the suffering of pain is that we might minimize its presence. So think back in your own life at times when you were quite ill, or you observed the suffering of illness in others. Times when you experienced grief or loss, where you were with others as they experienced grief or loss. Times when anxieties, fears, worries predominated your experiences. The disappointment of not getting what you wanted. And even just the daily sufferings of hunger, thirst, aches in the body. Come to an understanding that every day has some measure of the suffering of pain in it. There's really no moment that we're never completely separated from that experience. If you can generate an insight into the truth of that, then rest your mind in confronting suffering in that way. And then begin to contemplate changeable suffering. The difficulty with changeable suffering isn't that we minimize its presence in our lives like we do with the suffering of pain, but the real problem is that we misunderstand the nature of changeable suffering. We are naturally motivated to avoid the sources of the suffering of pain. But unfortunately, we're attracted to the sources of the suffering of change. All of the sources of the suffering of change are what we would normally think of as pursuing our happiness, the pursuit of good food, entertainment, music, books, museums, vacations. All of the things that we save up our money for, different experiences. These are unstable, unreliable, and ultimately disappointing. You can think of the last really great meal that we had. Think of the first bite of that meal. How delicious and pleasing it seemed. Then how often, by the end of those meals, we feel stuffed. We say, I couldn't eat another bite. If we were forced to eat another plate, another 2 plates, the food would appear disgusting to the mind. It would become torturous. And it's the same object that we thought about all day, that we saved up to be able to afford. The object didn't change, but continued experience of the object gave rise to pain. Because all ordinary objects come along with their own attendant dissatisfaction. And the more that we engage with the object, the more that that attendant dissatisfaction becomes noticeable. That first moment replaces a previous suffering, the suffering of hunger is momentarily replaced. And that is something that we label as happiness. But because the food is incapable of actually bestowing true happiness, the food is not in the nature of happiness, then its attendant suffering, its attendant dissatisfaction gets louder and louder in the mind. And this is true of all ordinary objects. So again, think back over your life and the striving for these sensory pleasures. And recognize that they've never been successful in causing true happiness to arise in the mind, and that you constantly have to set them aside in order to try to prevent them from becoming an observable source of the suffering of pain. And constantly moving from one to the other, trying to engage in them just enough before they become painful, because that is their nature. To review your life in that way, and if you can give rise to another insight of the truth of that, when that dawns in the mind, then rest your mind, absorb your mind in that truth, that insight. And then the third type of suffering is all pervasive suffering. And this suffering is simply having a body and mind that is a product of karma and affliction. So I think this body and mind of mine has as its origin past karma mixed with delusion, with affliction. It arose not by choice, but completely under the influence of past karma that was mixed with fundamental ignorance. And therefore, it serves as the basis of dissatisfaction. This mind isn't free, even now, of creating new karma mixed with delusion, affliction. And therefore, the causes of future suffering are being created every day through mistaken actions. To generate a recognition that there's nothing about this ordinary samsaric experience that I should grasp at, that I should see as desirable. That I myself and all other ordinary sentient beings are tied to this perpetual cycle of suffering due to all pervasive conditioned suffering. So I try to generate a sense of urgency, strong determination to free oneself from this and to use that state of freedom to perfectly benefit all sentient beings. And then when you're ready, we'll come back together. And we'll dedicate. So recollect your altruistic motivation and think that by having engaged in this contemplation, you have actualized that motivation, which has generated positive energy in your mind. And think that you freely offer the fruit of your practice, that positive energy, for the benefit of all sentient beings without exception. Thinking strongly when this positive energy ripens, may it serve as a cause and condition to eliminate war and conflict, poverty, famine, disease, disasters, all painful inner and outer conditions. May it fully ripen the minds of all sentient beings. May they quickly meet perfect teachers and arise in the state of full enlightenment. May I too achieve the state of enlightenment so that I might work for the benefit of sentient beings perfectly. May any obstacles facing the Guru's long life be completely dispelled. May I and all sentient beings in this moment come under the joyful care and guidance of enlightened beings. May we be guided and protected until we swiftly achieve that state of enlightenment. All right, we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll come back at 1 minute after 11 Mountain Time. Right, any thoughts or questions so far? So we will move on to what are called the six sufferings. I don't know why they couldn't vary the names of these a little bit, but uh, they are what they are. So again, we'll try to find a comfortable, upright position. And then again, begin to quiet the mind by concentrating on our breathing, creating a buffer between the busyness of life and engaging in a process of making the mind more subtle, moving the mind inward, away from sensory experience. And briefly recollect our sense of having cultivated refuge, having generated the mind of bodhicitta, reasserting our expansive virtuous motivation. And we begin to contemplate the first of the six sufferings, which is indefiniteness, the understanding that within samsara there's nothing that is truly reliable. All of our relationships, our positions, our experiences are constantly in flux. And think back in our own lives, the indefiniteness of our relationships. There are many times, even within a single lifetime, that we at one point felt very close to someone. And then perhaps they said or did something that we found too difficult. And then they arose in our mind as the enemy, or we simply drifted apart. And they arose in our mind as the stranger. Similarly, everyone that we meet for the first time exists at that moment as the stranger. And then they become friend or enemy. And even our enemies, those we find difficult, sometimes they can become friends when we understand them in a different way over time. And certainly across lifetimes. Those in this lifetime who are our enemies have been our mother, our father, our children, our closest friend, our husbands, our wives. And those we're close to in this life, similarly in the past, have been our most sworn enemy. There's no certainty within cyclic existence. We may achieve a certain amount of wealth or a certain position, a certain amount of respect, and it can all be wiped away. Similarly, we may spend many years in a lowly state and our fortunes can reverse. And even after that first change, they can change again and again. And across lifetimes, we have been all manner of kings and queens and rulers and presidents and inventors, captains of industry. And we've been beggars, and those riddled with disease, criminals, murderers. So reflect in this way and recognize that there is no certainty, no definiteness to be found within samsara. Then the second suffering is dissatisfaction, the understanding that there's nothing within samsara that truly satisfies us. No matter how much we obtain, we always want more, want better, want new, recollecting again the changeable suffering. Think of how many times we thought, if I just had this job or this relationship or this house, then things would be better. Think of how much time and energy and effort we put into being comfortable. And still, the mind is never at ease, never satisfied. We get one thing and we want the next best thing. Or we think that one new circumstance or condition will solve all of our problems, only to understand that it comes with different problems. When you're poor, you have the suffering of deprivation. When you're rich, you fear loss. When you're alone, you wish for a partner. When you have a partner, you sometimes have conflict, difficulty. There's no perfection to be found. So give rise to a strong insight that no matter how much I accumulate, it can't ever really be enough. None of those objects have the power to make me happy. And then the third suffering is having to abandon the body again and again. So think of this body that you inhabit, your strong attachment, all of the energy and time that you've put into washing it, clothing it, feeding it, protecting it from harm, seeking out medical care, exercising, trying to eat well. Recognize that this body is impermanent, changing moment by moment by moment. That began in the womb at the first moment of conception. The cells began to divide and change and differentiate starting at that moment, and that process has never stopped. It's one continuous process. And that process will end in this body no longer being able to host this consciousness. The body will become weaker, more frail, more subject to disease. And then death will come. And body and mind will separate. And this is only once in a beginningless chain of these separations. It's the nature of the mind to associate with form. So, in all of our beginningless past lives, mind has inhabited form. Mind is separated from form, having to experience the suffering of death over and over again, without choice. We've had bodies of every kind of animal, every kind of intermediate state being, hell being, hungry ghost, God and demigod. We've inhabited even the form and formless realms. Each time laboring under the illusion of this is me. Each time being ripped away from that experience at death. And try to feel a sense of weariness. All of that time and energy and effort leading only to separation. And then the flip side of that is the fourth, suffering, taking rebirth again and again. Each of these separations is followed by the mind entering yet another form. And that process has been completely under the control of karma and delusion. Negative actions giving rise to suffering experiences. Positive actions still being contaminated by ignorance, giving rise to a relative higher realm rebirth, but still within samsara due to those actions tinged with ignorance. So again, think that up until now I've been powerless, completely under the control of karma and delusion, never choosing my rebirth, never choosing my experiences. And if I remain in such a state, I will never be able to be of benefit to others. They too are experiencing this endless cycle. Try to clearly see your existential condition so that you can generate this strong wish to put an end to it, not to be depressed by it, but to have the resolve to overcome it. And then the fifth suffering is moving constantly between high and low. This is connected to indefiniteness in a way. We think that between this, or within this one lifetime, there are times when we felt that we had achieved what we wanted. And then there are times that we felt a bit lost, a bit despondent. And across lifetimes, there are experiences that are marked by incredible suffering. And there are experiences that are relatively light and blissful. And I think that's the nature of samsaric experience, is this up and down range of possibilities. But when we achieve a peak, we know that there's nowhere else to go but back down. It's still an endless cycle. So those highs are marked by fear of loss, and the lows are marked by pain and striving. Just think of all of the ways in which that has been true within this lifetime and also across lifetimes. Allowing that to give rise to a strong wish to simply put down this burden of cyclic existence. And then the next contemplation, next suffering is the state of being friendless. So, with regard to this contemplation, we recognize that our journey through samsara is one that we experience ultimately on our own. It is our own mind that gives rise to affliction due to its own familiarities, its own habits, its own tendencies. And there's no one else who can truly remove those afflictions. It must be done under our own work, our own energy, our own effort. We can't rely on anyone around us. Certain people can point us in the right direction, but ultimately we must engage in that work ourselves. And the landscape of our lives is internal. Our experience of pleasure and pain, our motivations, our interests, our aspirations, our desires are not really able to be shaped by others. We must take responsibility for doing that ourselves. And at the time of our death, we may be surrounded by people we care for and who care for us, but ultimately that journey too is internal. The arising of the karma at that time is something that we alone are responsible for. No one else can create the perfect conditions for the arising of constructive karma. That will depend upon having created constructive karma throughout the whole of our lifetime. No one can purify our negative karma. It will depend upon our own effort. So ultimately, we journey throughout samsara without being able to truly rely on others to engage in this work for us. There are some supportive conditions that can arise, but we must choose to put in the time, the energy, the effort to transform our own habits, tendencies, impulses. And of course, to other people's relationship to us is variable, unstable. To reflect on these six sufferings, and see them as baked into ordinary, unenlightened experience. See them as having marked your experience in this life and across beginningless past lives. And be strongly determined to see clearly that this is your existential condition, but only at present, due to the causes and the conditions that are arising, due to different causes and conditions, different experiences can arise. The enlightened experience can arise. So use this as fuel for moving in that direction, creating those new causes and conditions. And then when you're ready, we'll come back together. And we'll dedicate. Do some more Traditional dedication prayers. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. May the precious view of emptiness that has not arisen, arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. May the supreme realization of the two stages that has not arisen, arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realized things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by the victorious ones thus gone of the three times, so I might perform good works. Okay, are there any thoughts or questions so far? All right, we'll break for lunch. As I said, maybe go for a stroll outside, and we'll come back at 1:30.